Have you ever been told you don't belong somewhere, even when you had every right to be there? Now, imagine being just 10 years old, climbing onto a plane with your father, a man who built his life from nothing into one of the most successful black CEOs in America, only to have your seat ripped away by anger, prejudice, and entitlement. What would you do if it were your child, frozen under the gaze of strangers, humiliated for simply sitting where he belonged? Would you fight back with fury or hold your son close and teach him another way? This is not just a story about a seat on an airplane. It's a story about choice, about whether we let injustice harden us or transform us. And it's about one boy whose quiet dignity forced the world to ask, what kind of justice do we really believe in? If it were you, what would you choose? Stay with us, because this journey will challenge you, move you, and maybe even heal something inside you. And before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so more people can hear this story that just might change lives. The first images did not come from a news crew or a polished documentary. They came from a passenger's phone. A shaky camera, the hum of engines, muffled voices, and then a sudden eruption. A boy's voice, small, steady, but trembling at the edges. "Sir, this is my seat." The camera tilted, catching the child's face in profile. 10 years old, skin the deep brown of his father's heritage. Eyes wide but trying hard to stay calm. He wore a navy hoodie, sleeves too long for his arms, and clutched a small leather compass in his palm. Across the aisle, a man leaned forward, white hair, red cheeks, a tailored jacket. His voice cut through the cabin. "You don't belong here. This is first class, not a daycare." Gasps, murmurs. The flight attendant hesitated, unsure, frozen by the sharpness of the words. The boy, Jordan Coleman, pressed himself against the seat back, his knuckles white around the compass. His lips moved as if to form a reply, but the weight of dozens of eyes silenced him. Then, unexpectedly, he stood. His feet barely touched the floor. With a voice too calm for a child, he whispered, "If you want the seat that badly, you can have it." The man scoffed, but the sound was drowned out by the chorus of voices rising from other passengers. "That's a kid. Are you serious? Leave him alone." The phone camera shook as people leaned into the aisle. A woman's hand appeared on screen, protective, steady on the boy's shoulder. Another voice, a woman's, firm and clear, said, "Enough. This is unacceptable." The clip ended there, cutting off in the middle of chaos, but it was enough. By the time the flight landed, the video had already been shared to a private group chat. Within an hour, it was on Twitter. By the next morning, it had more than 10 million views. The headline came first from a small local outlet, "Child harassed on flight over seat assignment." But then the second headline broke through like lightning. Victim identified as son of tech billionaire Darius Coleman. The story exploded. Twitter threads dissected every second of the video. TikTok creators lip-synced the confrontation, reenacting the scene with dramatic flair. On Facebook, family groups argued over respect for elders versus trauma for children. And under every video, every comment section, one question echoed again and again: how could a grown man scream at a child like that? The answer only fueled the fire. Jordan Coleman was not just any child. He was the only son of Darius Coleman, CEO of Helios Dynamics, one of the fastest rising technology firms in America. A man who had risen from the south side of Chicago to become a billionaire by 40. A man whose suits, speeches, and stern silence had made him a figure of both admiration and fear on Wall Street. Now, suddenly, the public saw his son, a boy with his mother's gentle eyes, his father's jawline, and a presence too fragile for the storm he had walked into. When reporters crowded outside Helios Dynamics Manhattan headquarters, they expected fireworks. A man known for sharp takedowns of competitors, for courtroom battles and ruthless acquisitions, surely he would unleash his lawyers, his money, his fury. Instead, they got nothing. No statement, no tweet, no press conference. Darius Coleman walked from his black SUV into the glass tower of Helios without a word. His jaw was tight, his hand steady on Jordan's shoulder, but his eyes hidden behind dark lenses gave nothing away. That silence only deepened the mystery. What was he planning? Revenge? A lawsuit, a settlement, or something else entirely? America argued with itself in real time. Some said Jordan was just a spoiled rich kid, cushioned by wealth. Plenty of kids get yelled at every day. One viral tweet declared, "We just don't film it." Others, far louder, called it what it was: racism, plain and simple. The boy's calmness, his willingness to give up his seat, became proof of a deeper wound. Commentators on morning shows used the phrase black composure. The burden of maturity demanded too early from black children. And somewhere between those hashtags and debates sat Jordan himself, a child watching his face play again and again on screens he couldn't escape. 3 days later, when the airline issued a public apology, the video had already changed from a clip to a symbol, but inside the Coleman penthouse, the story was far from over. Jordan still woke in the middle of the night, clutching his compass, replaying the man's voice in his dreams, and his father, the man the world expected to fight back with fire and iron, was watching silently, weighing something heavier than vengeance. What no one knew then was that this single flight would unravel old griefs, expose hidden truths, and force both father and son to face not just a stranger's prejudice, but the fractures within their own family. The storm had only begun. The penthouse windows stretched from floor to ceiling, opening onto a view of Manhattan that glittered like a million restless stars. Traffic moved far below in thin streams of light, horns faint under the heavy hush of insulated glass. Inside, everything was silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional clink of ice settling in a glass. Jordan sat at the kitchen counter in his pajamas, his legs swinging back and forth, too short to touch the ground. He was staring at a half-empty glass of orange juice, running his finger through the condensation rings it left on the counter. His hair was still damp from the shower, his hoodie 2 sizes too big, sleeves covering his hands. At the far end of the room, his father leaned against the granite island, a tumbler of water in one hand. The overhead lights carved sharp lines into his face, the same face financial magazines had once called unreadable. Tonight it was unreadable still, but the silence between him and his son was louder than anything outside. "Do you want toast?" Darius asked finally, his voice low, almost careful. Jordan shook his head. "Not hungry." The boy's voice was quiet, but the words landed heavy in the air. He hadn't eaten much since they got back from the airport. The kitchen that usually smelled of Isabella's cooking. Isabella, their longtime housekeeper, who had become almost family, felt cold now, like a hotel lobby. Darius set his glass down. He had faced hostile boards, cutthroat competitors, senators with veiled threats. None of it had shaken him the way his son's silence did. "You were brave," he said after a moment. Jordan glanced up, eyes wide. uncertain whether to believe it. I didn't feel brave. I felt small, like everyone was staring at me, waiting for me to do something right. His words tightened something deep in Darius's chest. That composure, that sense of responsibility, he knew it too well. He'd carried it since he was Jordan's age, when life had forced him to be the adult in every room. He had promised himself his son would never have to feel that way. Yet here they were. Sometimes being brave means just staying in your seat, Darius said softly. Jordan frowned. But I gave up my seat? That wasn't brave. It was just easier. Darius stepped closer. He rested a hand on the counter, careful not to crowd his son, careful not to press too hard. It takes strength to walk away. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The boy didn't answer. He twisted the compass in his hands, the small silver circle catching the kitchen lights. It had belonged to his mother, Naomi, gone now 3 years. He carried it everywhere. Dad, he whispered finally, why did he hate me? The question cut sharper than any accusation. Darius's throat tightened. He searched for an answer, but all that came were fragments. Because you were born with skin he chose to see as threat. Because prejudice is a sickness that blinds. Because power doesn't always protect the people you love. But he couldn't say those things to his son. Not yet. He didn't know you, Darius said instead, choosing each word with care. People fear what they don't understand, and when fear mixes with arrogance, it can sound like hate. Jordan's lips pressed together. He didn't look convinced. Is he going to get in trouble? The boy asked. Yes, Darius said without hesitation. The certainty in his tone was the certainty of a man used to controlling outcomes. I'll make sure of it. Jordan's gaze shifted to his father's face, studying it with a seriousness far older than his years. Like the reporter, the words stopped Darius cold. He hadn't expected his son to remember. Years earlier, a journalist had printed cruel lies about Naomi after her car accident. Within weeks, the man had lost his career. It had been Darius's doing, though he had never admitted it out loud. What do you mean? He asked carefully. I heard you on the phone back then, Jordan said simply. You said, make sure he never writes again. Darius inhaled slowly, his control steady, but inside something flickered shame, perhaps, or recognition. His son remembered more than he thought. Some people need consequences, Darius said. His voice was calm, but the words were weighted. Jordan tilted his head. But will that make me feel better? The boy's question hung in the air like smoke. Later that night, after Jordan had gone to bed, Darius stood in his study. The room smelled faintly of leather and sandalwood. First edition books lined the shelves, awards gleamed under dim lights, and on his desk sat 2 piles, one of legal briefs, the other of framed photographs. He picked up the photograph on top. Naomi at her law school graduation, radiant in her cap and gown, holding Jordan as a baby. Her eyes, Jordan's eyes, sparkled with a joy that seemed impossible to recapture now. Naomi, he whispered into the quiet. I don't know what to do. For the first time in years, his voice cracked. The next morning, the penthouse was filled with the clatter of dishes as Isabella served breakfast. Pancakes, bacon, strawberries. The smell was comforting, but Jordan sat listless, pushing fruit around his plate. Darius entered dressed in a tailored weekend suit, immaculate as always. He greeted Isabella, thanked her, and sat across from his son. "How did you sleep?" he asked. Jordan hesitated. "Okay." Then, remembering his father's rule about honesty, he added softly, "Bad dreams. About the plane." Darius reached across the table, resting his hand lightly on Jordan's. "I will always come for you," he said, the words deliberate, solemn, always. Jordan nodded, but the look in his eyes said the reassurance had not reached the place it needed to. That afternoon, Judge Miriam Lawson arrived. She was tall, elegant even in retirement, her silver hair pulled back, her eyes sharp but kind. She had been Naomi's mentor, almost like family. Jordan hadn't seen her in years. When she stepped into the living room, her gaze went immediately to him. She smiled gently. "The last time I saw you, you were up to here," she said, holding her hand at her waist. "You've grown." Jordan blinked, studying her, then surprised everyone by holding up his compass. "You knew my mom?" "Right," he asked. Miriam's expression softened. She touched the compass reverently. "I knew her well. She was one of the finest minds I ever mentored, and one of the bravest hearts." "Can you tell me about her?" Jordan asked, his voice eager, almost hungry. Miriam glanced at Darius. His jaw tightened, but after a moment he gave a small nod. So she sat with Jordan on the couch, and for the first time in years, the boy heard stories about his mother, how she had once led a sit-in at law school to demand more women authors on the syllabus, how she had recited poetry at parties with fearless confidence, how she had believed fiercely in justice that healed rather than destroyed. Jordan listened wide-eyed, and Darius, standing by the window with the city sprawling below, listened too. Each word was a thread pulling him back to the woman he had loved, and to the question he was still avoiding: what kind of justice would honor her memory now? The world outside still buzzed with headlines and hashtags, but inside the Coleman home, another story was unfolding. A father learning the limits of his power, a son asking questions too big for his age, and a mentor arriving just in time to remind them both of the woman who had once been their compass. The storm was far from over. In many ways, it was only beginning. The city never truly slept. But on that Monday morning, it seemed as though New York had woken up sharper, hungrier, more electric than usual. News trucks lined the sidewalks outside Helios Dynamics headquarters. Anchors in polished suits stood with microphones in hand, their voices competing with the blare of horns and the rhythmic chants of protesters. Handmade signs bobbed above the crowd. "Justice for Jordan. Protect black children. No seat is too small for respect." The air vibrated with outrage, but also with spectacle. Cameras flashed like lightning, each one capturing a story the world thought it already understood. Inside his corner office, high above the noise, Darius Coleman stood by the glass. His suit was charcoal gray, crisp as armor. The city stretched beneath him, but his eyes weren't on the view. They were fixed on the television mounted on the opposite wall. A talk show host was playing the clip again, over and over. Jordan's small voice, Charles Whitmore's thunderous reply, the gasps of strangers, the same 30 seconds dissected by experts, lawyers, and activists. Beside the host sat a panel of commentators. One woman leaned forward, fire in her voice. "This is not just about a seat on a plane. This is about the dehumanization of black children in America." This boy was forced into composure beyond his years because he knew, instinctively, that anger would be punished. Another voice, A man in a tailored suit countered smoothly. Let's not overblow this. Kids get scolded all the time. The only reason this is news is because the boy's father is rich. Remove the billionaire angle, and this would have disappeared overnight. Darius muted the television, jaw tightening. It wasn't the first time he had heard that dismissal, but each repetition stung. He wasn't angry for himself. He was angry because Jordan had become a symbol stripped of his humanity, a pawn in America's endless culture war. The intercom buzzed. His assistant's voice came through, crisp and efficient. "Mr. Coleman, the attorneys are ready for you." Darius turned from the window. His expression hardened. The softness he showed his son replaced by the steel the world expected. "Send them in." 3 men entered, carrying sleek briefcases and thicker folders. They were the best specialists in litigation, corporate defense, and media management. "We've already prepared a civil suit against the airline." The lead attorney began. "Negligence, emotional distress, discrimination. The video evidence is strong. We could also file defamation if Whitmore continues his public comments." Darius's voice was low but decisive. "What about Whitmore himself?" The attorneys exchanged a glance. "We can target his finances, dig into his holdings, his business ties. If we move quickly, we can make him toxic in every boardroom." "Do it," Darius said. No hesitation. The attorneys nodded, already flipping open their laptops. But as they spoke, Darius's mind wasn't entirely on the strategy. He could still hear Jordan's question from the night before, quiet and piercing, "Will that make me feel better?" He had no answer. That evening, the penthouse felt different. Reporters still crowded the street below. Protest chants drifted faintly through the double-glass windows. Isabella moved softly through the kitchen, but even she couldn't chase away the tension that clung to the air. Jordan was curled on the couch, knees tucked to his chest, watching cartoons without laughing. The compass sat in his palm, spinning idly as though it might point him somewhere safer. Darius lowered himself into the armchair across from him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Jordan said, "Are people mad at me?" The words caught Darius off guard. "Why would they be mad at you?" "Because I gave up the seat. People online say I should have stayed, that I made us look weak." Darius leaned forward, his hands steepled. "Listen to me. You are not weak. You did nothing wrong. People on the internet don't know you. They don't know what it feels like to be in that moment." Jordan studied him, then asked the question that had been burning since the video went viral. "Are you going to destroy him?" The silence stretched. Darius chose his words carefully. "I'm going to make sure he faces consequences, but you're going to crush him." "Right." Jordan's voice was steady, but his eyes were searching, as though he already knew the answer. Darius exhaled. "That's how the world works. Son, actions have consequences. He hurt you. He needs to understand that." Jordan looked down at his compass. His thumb traced the worn edge. When he spoke again, his voice was almost too soft to hear. "Mom wouldn't do it that way." The words struck harder than any public criticism could. 2 days later, Judge Miriam Lawson arrived again. This time she came with someone new. Dr. Sophia Grant, the woman who had stepped in on the flight. Jordan recognized her immediately. His eyes widened. "You're the lady who told him to stop." Sophia smiled warmly. "That was me, and I should have spoken up sooner. I'm sorry you had to go through that." Jordan shrugged, though his shoulders were tense. I'm used to people looking at me like that. Sophia's heart ached at the matter-of-fact way he said it. She turned to Darius. This is exactly why silence isn't enough. We can't just punish Whitmore and call it justice. The boy needs more than that. He needs healing. Darius's gaze hardened. Healing doesn't stop men like Whitmore. Power does. Miriam stepped in, her voice calm but firm. Power without compassion becomes revenge. Darius. Naomi knew that. She built her life on it. The name hung heavy in the air. Darius turned away, his shoulders rigid. The city skyline burned orange with sunset behind him. His reflection in the glass looked every bit the Titan the world imagined, except his eyes betrayed a fracture he couldn't hide. "What do you suggest?" he asked finally. Sophia's reply was careful. A dialogue, public, honest. Let the man face what he did, not just lose what he owns. Let Jordan see that his voice has power, not just your lawyers. Darius's jaw clenched. It sounded weak, insufficient. But when he looked at Jordan, sitting small on the couch, clutching his compass as though it were a shield, something shifted. Maybe it wasn't about what he wanted. Maybe it was about what his son needed. By the end of that week, the debate had reached Washington. Senators gave statements. Activists marched in solidarity. Morning shows speculated about the fate of Charles Whitmore. And, in a quiet penthouse above it all, Darius Coleman prepared for a choice he had never imagined he'd face, whether to wield his power as a weapon or to let his son's courage point him toward a different kind of justice. The storm outside was relentless, but the real battle, he knew, was within his own walls and within himself. The decision was coming, and whatever he chose, it would shape not only his son's healing, but the legacy of the Coleman name. The airplane smelled faintly of coffee and recycled air, the way every long-haul flight did. Jordan Coleman shifted in his seat, pressing his forehead against the cool window. Clouds floated like pale mountains beneath him. He traced a finger across the glass, pretending they were real peaks he could climb. He liked planes. They felt like secret worlds suspended between earth and sky. No school bullies, no whispering strangers, no headlines. Just the steady thrum of engines and the quiet click of seat belts. This trip was supposed to be different. A weekend getaway with his father, just the two of them. For weeks. He had dreamed of it, long talks, laughter, maybe even stories about his mom. Instead, his father had spent the first hour with his laptop open, typing furiously, while Jordan fiddled with the small compass in his pocket. Still, he told himself, it was enough, just being here, side by side. Then came the voice, sharp, cutting through the hum like a blade. "Hey, kid, you're in the wrong place." Jordan turned. The man in the seat across the aisle leaned forward. His hair was silver, his face flushed with irritation. Charles Whitmore. At that moment, Jordan didn't know his name. He only knew the scorn curling in the man's lip. "This is first class," Whitmore continued, his voice rising. "You don't belong here." The words slammed into Jordan with a force he couldn't explain. His cheeks burned hot. He wanted to sink into the seat, disappear. He glanced toward his father. Darius was still on his laptop, earbuds in, his gaze locked on the screen. For a heartbeat. Jordan thought about tugging at his sleeve, but something in him froze. Everyone was watching. Dozens of eyes turned toward him, curious, judgmental, expectant. He felt small, so small, like a bug pinned under glass. Jordan's voice cracked. He swallowed hard. "This is my seat." The cabin fell quiet. Whitmore's laugh was low, ugly. "Your seat. Don't make me laugh. Seats like this aren't for little boys with sticky fingers. Go back where you came from." A gasp rippled through the cabin. Someone muttered, "Unbelievable," but no one moved. Not yet. Jordan's palms sweated. He wanted to shout, to scream that it wasn't fair, but deep inside, something whispered, "If you get angry, you lose." So he did the only thing he thought would keep the peace. He stood, his knees knocked against the seat in front of him. He clutched his compass tight, the metal biting into his skin. His voice was soft, trembling. "If you want the seat, you can have it." The hush broke. Passengers erupted in protest. A woman near the front stood halfway, her voice firm. "Leave him alone." Another passenger fumbled for his phone, camera already rolling. That was when Sophia Grant rose. She moved quickly, planting herself between Whitmore and the boy. Her voice carried the weight of authority. "Enough. Sit back down, sir. This is harassment, and it ends now." Whitmore sputtered, but her presence, coupled with the glares of half the cabin, forced him into silence. He sank back into his seat, muttering under his breath. Jordan lowered himself again, his chest tight, his pulse hammering in his ears. He didn't look at anyone. He just stared at the compass in his palm, whispering silently to himself, "Stay small, stay quiet, stay safe." Later, long after the plane landed, the images of that moment replayed endlessly online, but for Jordan, the memory wasn't a clip or a headline. It was the sound of Whitmore's voice echoing in his skull, the sting of humiliation, the crushing weight of strangers' eyes, and it was the silence of his father. Darius hadn't seen it. By the time he pulled out his earbuds, Sophia was already standing, the confrontation nearly over. He caught only the tail end, the boy sinking into his seat, the man grumbling angrily, the passengers buzzing with outrage. When Darius asked what happened, Jordan only shrugged. Nothing. But in the hotel that night, when Jordan tossed and turned, clutching the compass until his fingers hurt, Darius realized it had been anything but nothing. Back in New York, as the video spread, Darius replayed the scene in his mind again and again. His son's quiet voice, his son giving up the seat he had every right to keep. It ate at him. Not just the cruelty of Whitmore's words, but the fact that Jordan had felt he had no choice, that he had learned, so young, the art of swallowing rage to survive. The more Darius thought about it, the more the fury burned. In the boardroom, he had destroyed competitors for less. In the courtroom, he had stripped rivals of their empires, and now a grown man had humiliated his son in public, leaving scars that no settlement could erase. The attorneys wanted lawsuits, the media wanted statements, protesters wanted justice, but Darius wanted something deeper. He wanted Whitmore broken. One evening, Jordan sat at the dining table, homework spread before him, though his pencil barely moved. The compass lay open beside the math problems, its needle twitching as though restless. "Dad," he asked suddenly. "Yes. Why didn't you stop him?" The question was quiet, but it landed like a hammer. Darius set his glass down slowly. "I didn't see it happen. Jordan, if I had, I would have." Jordan's lips pressed into a thin line. "But you always say you see everything." Darius froze. His son was right. He had built a career on vigilance, on anticipating moves before they happened. Yet, when it mattered most, when it was his own child, he had been blind. "I failed you," he admitted at last, his voice raw. Jordan looked at him for a long time, then nodded slightly. Yeah. There was no anger in the boy's tone, just weary acceptance. That hurt more than rage ever could. On the news that night, commentators dissected every second of the confrontation. One called Jordan remarkably composed for a child. Another called him timid, submissive. Darius turned the television off. He didn't need strangers defining his son. He had seen the courage in Jordan's stillness, the strength in his restraint, but he also saw the wound, and he knew wounds like that didn't heal with money or apologies. The next morning, he found Jordan staring out the window, compass in hand. The boy spoke without turning. "Will it ever stop? People looking at me like I don't belong." Darius stepped beside him, his hand resting lightly on Jordan's shoulder. "One day, it will. Because people like you will change it." Jordan turned, eyes searching. "Or people like you." The question pierced deeper than intended. Darius looked into his son's gaze, Naomi's gaze, and wondered if he had the strength to choose justice over vengeance, compassion over destruction. He didn't know the answer yet, but the flight had changed everything, and neither of them could go back. The video spread faster than wildfire. Within 24 hours, it was everywhere: morning talk shows, late-night comedy monologues, trending hashtags, on TikTok. Teenagers reenacted the moment Jordan stood to give up his seat, their captions laced with anger. "He's 10 years old. Why should he have to act like a grown man?" On Twitter, the clip sparked thousands of threads dissecting every gesture, every word. Some hailed Jordan as a child with the poise of a leader. Others asked the harsher question, why did no one stop it sooner? By the second day, cable news anchors debated what the incident revealed about race, wealth, and privilege in America. The narrative was no longer just about a boy on a plane. It had become a mirror reflecting the fractures of a nation. At the center of it all was Jordan. He didn't see the trending hashtags. He didn't watch the interviews. Darius shielded him as best he could, confiscating iPads and phones, telling his son, "It's grown-up stuff. You don't need to read it, but children always find ways to know." At school, classmates whispered in hallways, their eyes darting toward him. Some offered awkward smiles of sympathy. Others teased mocking his trembling voice in the video, parroting Whitmore's sneer, "You don't belong here." By the end of the week, Jordan had stopped eating lunch in the cafeteria. He sat alone in the library instead, staring at the compass, tracing its smooth edges until his thumb ached. Meanwhile, Darius faced pressure of another kind. His office became a war room. Advisors crowded his penthouse living room, laptops open, charts glowing. Lawyers demanded immediate legal action. Publicists drafted statements. Board members left voicemails, insisting that Helios Dynamics' reputation was on the line. "This isn't just about your son," one advisor said, pacing. "It's about the company's image, about how the market sees your leadership." Darius cut him off sharply. "This is about my son. Period." The room went silent. No one dared push further. But the truth hung heavy for a man like Darius. Personal and public were never separate. Every move he made reverberated far beyond his penthouse walls. That evening, Judge Miriam Lawson arrived unannounced. She moved through the penthouse like someone who had known the family for years because she had Naomi's mentor, Jordan's godmother, in all but name. Her silver hair was tied back, her posture straight, her eyes carrying the gravity of decades on the bench. Darius met her at the door. "Miriam," he said, surprised. "I didn't expect you never expect me," she replied briskly, stepping past him. "That's why I come." She found Jordan curled in the armchair by the window. The city spread like constellations below. He looked up, surprised. "Judge Lawson, just Miriam, sweetheart," she said, kneeling to his level. Her voice softened. "I came to see how you're holding up." Jordan hesitated. His eyes flicked toward his father, then back to her. "I'm fine." Miriam's smile was knowing. "You're Naomi's son. That means you're strong, but strong doesn't always mean fine." Jordan swallowed hard, clutching the compass tighter. He said nothing. Darius stood in the background, silent, his jaw tight. He wanted to shield his son, but Miriam's words sliced through the fortress he had built. After Jordan excused himself to bed, Miriam turned on Darius with a look that could still silence a courtroom. "You can't fight this the way you fight hostile takeovers," she said. "This isn't about winning. It's about healing." Darius bristled. "You think I should let Whitmore walk free? Humiliate my son with no consequences? I think your son needs to see another way. If all you teach him is vengeance, don't be surprised when that's the only language he speaks." The words landed heavier than he cared to admit. 2 days later, another voice entered the storm. "Dr. Sophia Grant appeared on National Tonight, the primetime interview slot watched by millions. Sitting upright in her navy blazer, pearl earrings glinting under studio lights, she spoke with calm authority. I witnessed the incident firsthand," she told the host. "What struck me most was not just the cruelty of the man's words, but the boy's response. He offered to give up his seat. That wasn't timidity. That was survival." Her words rippled across the country. Viewers leaned forward. She explained how children of color often learn to de-escalate to protect themselves, how dignity becomes armor, how silence becomes strategy. For a child to understand that at 10 years old is both heartbreaking and profoundly telling, she concluded. The question isn't why he gave up his seat. The question is why he felt he had to. The clip went viral within hours. Jordan's name was now part of a national conversation about race and childhood in America. That night, father and son sat side by side on the couch, the glow of the muted television flickering across their faces. Jordan broke the silence first. "She gets it." Darius looked down at him. "Dr. Grant." Jordan nodded. "She knows why I stood up. She knows what it feels like." Darius's chest tightened. His son wasn't supposed to know these things yet. He wasn't supposed to carry that kind of weight. Then Jordan asked the question Darius had dreaded. "Dad, what are you going to do to Mr. Whitmore?" Darius froze. He had been careful, hiding conversations behind closed doors, keeping his fury private. But Jordan had noticed anyway. He always noticed. "I'm handling it," Darius said carefully. "Like you handled that reporter who wrote about Mom Jordan's voice was soft, but steady." Darius winced. That memory still cut deep the article that had smeared Naomi after the accident. The swift retribution he had unleashed. The reporter had never written again. Jordan's eyes were steady. Too steady for a boy his age. "Destroying him won't make me feel better," he whispered. "It won't fix what happened." The words struck harder than any headline, any lawsuit, any market loss. For the first time, Darius wondered if his son was teaching him more than he could ever teach in return. Rain streaked across the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Coleman penthouse, each droplet catching the city lights like falling stars. Darius stood before the glass, a tumbler of scotch in his hand, 18-year-old Macallan Naomi's favorite. He swirled it slowly, watching the amber liquid coat the sides. On his desk behind him lay two folders. One was thick, the edges bristling with notes from his legal team. It detailed everything Whitmore's finances, his company's vulnerabilities, skeletons hidden in court records, a lawsuit that would bankrupt him, strip him of respectability, leave his name forever tainted. The other folder was thinner, yet heavier in its implications. Judge Lawson's proposal, written in her sharp script, a moderated dialogue, a chance for Whitmore to sit across from Jordan, to hear the boy's voice, to face what he had done, not with ruin, but with understanding. Darius stared at both. In his world, only one option had ever made sense: destroy the threat. But Jordan's words still echoed. Destroying him won't make me feel better. It won't fix what happened. The rain tapped harder, like impatient fingers on glass. The following morning, his chief counsel arrived early, spreading papers across the dining table. "We've got him," she said with a grim smile. "Whitmore took out a second mortgage last year. If we freeze his assets, he'll be finished within months." Darius only half listened. His gaze drifted to the living room, where Jordan sat on the rug, trying to build a Lego set. The boy's hands moved slowly, distractedly, as if his mind were elsewhere. "Mr. Coleman," the lawyer pressed. Darius raised a hand. "Leave it. I'll decide later." The lawyer blinked, startled. "Later, sir. With respect, timing is critical. The press cycle is on fire right now. If we act fast," I said later. Darius repeated, sharper this time. The lawyer gathered her things quickly and left. Jordan looked up from his Lego pieces, studying his father's face. "You don't look like you." Darius forced a smile. "What do you mean?" "You always know what to do," Jordan said simply. "But now, you look lost." The honesty in his voice cut deeper than any report. 2 days later, an unexpected call shattered the fragile balance. It was Whitmore himself. The man's voice over the phone was strained, almost broken. "Mr. Coleman." He faltered. "I've been getting death threats. My wife, my daughters, they can't leave the house." Darius felt no sympathy. "Not at first. That's the cost of actions. Mr. Whitmore, you humiliated a child. My child." "I know," Whitmore said quickly. "I was wrong. I've replayed it 100 times. I don't know what came over me. But please, I need a chance to make it right." Darius's jaw tightened. He wanted to hang up, yet something in Whitmore's tone, raw, frightened, gave him pause. When he ended the call, Jordan was standing in the doorway, listening. "You're talking to him?" the boy asked, wide-eyed. Darius hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." "Are you going to let him say sorry?" The question was simple, but behind it lay a maze of meaning. Jordan wasn't just asking about Whitmore. He was asking about the kind of man his father chose to be. That evening, Judge Lawson returned. They sat in the study, surrounded by Naomi's books, the faint smell of sandalwood still lingering. "He called me," Darius admitted. Miriam's eyes narrowed, and he begged, claimed he wants to make amends. Do you believe him? Darius swirled his scotch, thinking, I don't know. Part of me doesn't care. Part of me wants to crush him anyway. So no one ever tries this with Jordan again. And the other part, Miriam asked gently. Darius's gaze drifted to the photograph of Naomi on the desk. Her smile, bright and alive, seemed almost to answer for him. The other part wonders if vengeance would betray her. She believed in restoration, not just punishment. Miriam leaned forward. Then perhaps the choice isn't about Whitmore at all. It's about what lesson your son will carry, justice or destruction. The room fell silent. Outside, thunder rolled. Later that night, Jordan padded softly into his father's office. He carried the compass, holding it out like an offering. Mom used to tell me this always points north, he said quietly, even when you feel lost. Darius took the compass, feeling the weight of it in his palm. Are you lost? Dad Darius looked into his son's eyes, the same shade of deep brown as Naomi's. He exhaled. Yes, but maybe you're helping me find the way. Jordan climbed into his lap, resting his head against his father's chest. For a long while, neither spoke. The storm outside raged on, but in that moment, a fragile peace held between them. The peace didn't last. The next morning, a new headline appeared: Whitmore hires high-profile attorney. Prepares countersuit against airline. The man who had sounded contrite on the phone was now posturing through the press, painting himself as the victim of cancel culture. He claimed he had been unfairly maligned, that the video lacked context. Darius slammed the newspaper down, fury igniting. He's playing both sides, he growled, begging me in private, defiant in public. Jordan overheard, his small face tightening. So he lied. Darius's hands curled into fists. He could already hear his legal team's voices urging strike now. End him. But then Jordan whispered, almost to himself, or maybe he's just scared. The words stilled Darius's rage. He stared at his son, realizing the boy could see more nuance than the billionaire CEO in him ever allowed. The decision loomed larger than ever. Would he answer fear with power, or teach his son a different kind of strength? The email arrived late at night. Darius had been working through contracts, the city skyline glittering beyond the glass. When his phone buzzed, the subject line was simple. An idea for Jordan. It was from Dr. Sophia Grant. He opened it reluctantly, expecting another request for a statement. Instead, her words caught him off guard. I believe Jordan has a voice that deserves to be heard, not through headlines or viral clips, but in his own words. I'm proposing a facilitated conversation, Jordan. Mr. Whitmore, myself as moderator, private at first. If it goes well, perhaps public later. Healing is possible, but only if both parties are present. Please consider it. Darius leaned back in his chair. His first instinct was to delete it, exposing his son again. Risking another wound, impossible. But the image of Jordan offering up his seat replayed in his mind. The boy's voice, quiet but firm. If you want the seat, you can have it. There had been strength in that moment, even if it was born of fear. Maybe Sophia was right. Maybe Jordan's voice deserved more than silence. Still, the idea gnawed at him. Could a child carry that weight? The next morning, Darius found Jordan at the breakfast table, pushing cereal around with his spoon. The compass lay beside the bowl, as it always did. there's something I need to ask you." Darius began carefully. Jordan looked up. "What, Doctor? Grant thinks it might help if you talk to Mr. Whitmore, not on a plane, not with cameras, just in a room, with her there." Jordan froze. His spoon clinked against the bowl. "Talk to him, ya." Darius kept his voice even. "You don't have to. But if you wanted, it might help him understand what he did. For a long time." Jordan was silent. His eyes dropped to the compass, thumb circling the rim again and again. Finally, he whispered, "Would Mom want me to?" The question stabbed straight through Darius's chest. He swallowed hard. "She would want you safe, but she would also want you brave. Brave in a way that changes things." Jordan nodded slowly, though uncertainty clouded his face. "Can I think about it?" "Of course." That evening, Darius met with Judge Lawson. She sat across from him in the study, her eyes sharp as ever. "You're considering it," she said, reading him with ease. "I don't like it," Darius admitted, "but part of me wonders if this is the lesson Jordan needs. Not revenge, not silence, something else." Miriam's expression softened. "Naomi would be proud you're asking that question." He exhaled, tension heavy in his shoulders. "And if it hurts him, then you catch him when he falls," Miriam replied simply. 3 days later, Sophia Grant came to the penthouse. Jordan greeted her shyly, his hands tucked into his hoodie pocket. She knelt to his level, her eyes kind. "I wanted to thank you for letting me speak about you on television. You helped people see something important." Jordan shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't do anything." "Yes, you did," Sophia said. "You showed dignity. You reminded the world what strength looks like at 10 years old." Jordan's eyes flicked up, cautious but curious. "And you think I should talk to him?" Sophia nodded. "Only if you want to, but sometimes looking someone in the eye can take away their power. Sometimes it gives it back to you." The boy's fingers tightened around his compass. After a long pause, he whispered, "Okay, I'll try." The meeting was set for the following week. A private conference room, neutral ground, no press, no lawyers, just the boy, the man, and the woman who would guide them. But news has a way of leaking. 2 days before the meeting, the story broke Black Billionaire's son to meet his harasser face to face. The internet erupted. Commentators debated whether it was exploitation or empowerment. Activists demanded it be televised. Critics accused Darius of orchestrating a publicity stunt. By the next morning, cameras swarmed outside the Coleman building. Reporters shouted questions. "Mr. Coleman, is your son ready to confront his abuser Jordan? Do you have a message for America?" Darius shielded Jordan with his arm, ushering him past the crowd, but he could feel the tremor in the boy's small body. "Inside the elevator," Jordan whispered. "Why do they all care so much?" Darius crouched to meet his eyes. "Because your story is bigger than just you. But that doesn't mean you have to carry all of it, only what you choose." Jordan nodded, but the fear lingered in his gaze. The night before the meeting, Jordan couldn't sleep. He wandered into his father's study, where the soft glow of a desk lamp lit the room. Darius sat with Naomi's old journal open, his fingers tracing the ink of her handwriting. Jordan climbed into the armchair across from him. "What are you reading your mother's words?" Darius replied quietly. "She once wrote about a time when someone treated you unfairly at the park. She wanted to yell, but she didn't. She said real change doesn't come from shouting, it comes from showing people a better way. Jordan listened, eyes wide. Did it work? Darius smiled sadly. Sometimes, sometimes not, but she believed it was worth trying. The boy hugged his knees. I'm scared. So am I. Darius admitted. Jordan blinked. You're never scared? Darius leaned forward, his voice low but steady. I'm always scared. Scared of losing you. Scared of failing you. But being scared doesn't mean we stop. It means we go together. Jordan studied his father's face, then nodded slowly. Then I'll do it. With you there. Darius reached across, clasping his son's hand over the compass. Always. When morning came, the city seemed sharper, louder. Outside the building, cameras flashed, voices clamored, speculation soared. But inside the black car that carried them to the meeting, it was quiet. Jordan sat beside his father, compass in hand, shoulders squared. Are you ready? Darius asked softly. Jordan drew a breath, deep and steady. Ready? And though fear still flickered in his eyes, there was something else now, too. A determination that no headline could define. The boy who had once offered up his seat was about to claim his voice. The conference room was plain, almost austere. White walls, a long oak table, no cameras, no microphones, just silence, heavy and expectant. Jordan sat beside his father, his compass clutched tight in his palm. Across from them, Charles Whitmore shifted uneasily in his chair. He looked smaller than on the plane, smaller than in the viral video. His tailored suit couldn't mask the nervous twitch of his hands. Dr. Sophia Grant sat at the head of the table, calm, grounded. She folded her hands neatly and began, Thank you all for coming. This is not about punishment today. It's about truth. Mr. Whitmore, Jordan, you will each have the chance to speak, to listen, and, hopefully, to understand. Darius leaned back, his jaw tight. He was here to protect his son, nothing more. But Jordan leaned forward, eyes locked on the man who had humiliated him. Whitmore cleared his throat. His voice cracked. He tried again. Jordan, I owe you an apology. What I said on that plane was cruel. It was wrong. I embarrassed you in front of strangers. I embarrassed myself. I can't take it back, but I need you to know I'm sorry. His words hung in the air. Jordan stared at him, expression unreadable. For a long moment, it seemed like he might stay silent. But then, softly, he spoke. You said I didn't belong. Whitmore's face fell. I know. And I was wrong. Jordan's voice trembled, but his gaze didn't waver. Do you know what it feels like when grown-ups say that when everyone looks at you like you're less? Whitmore blinked rapidly, his jaw tightening as though holding back tears. I can imagine. No, Jordan said firmly, louder this time. You can't. Because when people say it to me, they don't just mean the seat, they mean everywhere. At school, in stores, on sidewalks. You only had to sit next to me for a few hours. I have to live with it every day. The room went still. Darius's chest tightened. Pride and pain surged together as he watched his son. He wanted to pull him close, shield him, but he also knew this was Jordan's moment. Whitmore lowered his gaze, shame written across his face. You're right. I can't know. I thought I was better than that. But the truth is, I've spent my whole life believing seats like that were mine, that I earned them, that someone like you didn't, and I hate that I thought it. even for a second. I hate that I said it out loud." Sophia's voice broke the silence. "This is what truth looks like, uncomfortable, but necessary." She turned to Jordan. "What would you like him to understand most?" Jordan gripped his compass, steadying his voice. "That I didn't give up my seat because I was scared of you. I gave it up because if I got angry, everyone would say, 'See, he doesn't belong.' I shouldn't have to be the bigger person when I'm 10. The words struck like lightning. Even Whitmore flinched. Tears burned at Darius's eyes. His son had laid bare the burden no child should carry. Whitmore swallowed hard. "You're right. You shouldn't. And I don't know how to fix what I did, but I want to try." Jordan looked at him for a long time, then nodded once, small but firm. "Then don't just say sorry. Do better. Next time you see a kid like me, or anyone who looks different, don't wait until you're embarrassed to stand up. Do it because it's right." The boy's voice was steady now. No tremor, no hesitation, for the first time since the flight. Darius saw not just his son, but his wife's legacy alive in him, Naomi's courage, Naomi's clarity. Sophia's eyes softened. "Jordan, that was powerful. Mr. Whitmore, the question is, what will you do with what you've heard today?" Whitmore sat very still. Then, quietly, he said, "I'll start by talking to my own grandchildren about this, about you, and I'll never forget this room." The meeting ended, but something lingered in the air, something heavier than apology, lighter than anger, a fragile beginning. On the drive home, Jordan leaned against a window, the compass in his lap. "Dad," he asked softly, "yes, did I do okay?" Darius looked at him, overwhelmed. "You did more than okay. You were stronger than I ever could have been at your age." Jordan smiled faintly, exhaustion tugging at his eyelids. "I wasn't scared when I talked. Not really. I think Mom would have been proud." Darius swallowed the lump in his throat. She would have been proud beyond words. Jordan's eyes fluttered shut, sleep claiming him. Darius sat back, staring out at the city passing by. For the first time in days, his chest felt lighter. His son hadn't just survived the moment, he had transformed it. But as the car rolled into the garage, Darius's phone buzzed. A new headline flashed across the screen: "Whitmore breaks, silence exclusive interview tonight." The fragile peace cracked. Was the man sincere in the room, or already twisting the narrative outside it? Darius closed his eyes, the Scotch-burned words of Miriam Lawson echoing in his mind. The choice isn't about him. It's about your son, justice or destruction. The storm wasn't over. In fact, it was only beginning. That evening, the Coleman penthouse was silent. The television glowed in the corner, muted. Jordan had already gone to bed, his compass tucked beneath his pillow. Darius sat alone, staring at the news ticker crawling across the bottom of the screen. Exclusive Charles Whitmore breaks silence. Against his better judgment, he unmuted the broadcast. There sat Whitmore, crisp suit, polished tie, seated across from a seasoned journalist. The lighting was perfect, his expression rehearsed. "I want to begin by saying I regret what happened." Whitmore started, his voice steady. "I said words I shouldn't have. I apologized directly to the boy and his father in private." Darius clenched his jaw. Private, that room had been about truth, not optics. Whitmore continued, "But I also believe the video didn't show the whole story. I was under stress. I'd had a long day. My health hasn't been great. I snapped. People have called me a racist. That's not who I am. I've served on boards, donated to charities, mentored young men of all backgrounds. The journalist leaned in. But Mr. Whitmore, you told a black child he didn't belong. Whitmore sighed heavily, shaking his head. I never meant it as it's being portrayed. I meant he didn't belong in that seat because, well, he was a child, unsupervised at the time. I was frustrated with the airline's policies. I made a mistake, but this narrative has spiraled out of control. I'm being vilified. My family's receiving threats. I've become the villain of a story that isn't that simple. The interview ended with him staring straight into the camera. I am not the monster people say I am. I am human, and I ask America to see me as such. The screen faded to commercial. Darius's blood boiled. He had sat across from that man, heard his trembling apology, and now Whitmore was rewriting the script for national television. The next morning, the backlash began. Some viewers bought into Whitmore's narrative. Hashtags emerged. Yash context matters, not a racist. On certain talk shows, pundits framed him as a victim of an overzealous cancel culture. Others pushed back harder. Activists blasted the interview, calling it a cowardly dodge. He didn't own his racism. One commentator said he weaponized sympathy to escape accountability. But for Jordan, the noise outside became unbearable. At school, kids quoted lines from the interview. Some sneered, "See, he didn't mean it like that." Others mocked him outright. "Guess you're famous for crying on planes now." By lunchtime, Jordan had locked himself in a bathroom stall, gripping the compass so tightly it left an imprint on his palm. When Darius picked him up that afternoon, he could see it, the slump in his shoulders, the storm in his eyes. "They don't believe me," Jordan whispered in the car. They think he was right. Darius's chest ached. He had promised to protect his son. Yet here he was, fighting battles no child should fight. That night, Judge Lawson joined them again. Her presence filled the study, calm yet unyielding. "He's shifting the battlefield," she said bluntly. "He's reframing himself as the victim. If you strike back now, you'll only feed his story. He'll say you're the billionaire silencing him." Darius paced, fists clenched. "So I just let him slander my son. Let him twist the truth." "No," Lawson said firmly. "But you need to fight with precision, not rage. Right now, the person people want to hear from isn't you. It's Jordan." Darius froze. His instincts screamed no. Expose Jordan again. Risk his son's heart being torn apart on live television. Never. But Miriam's gaze was steady. The world already knows his name. The question is whether he controls his story or lets Whitmore do it for him. Later that evening, Darius sat at Jordan's bedside. The boy lay curled under the blanket, compass clutched against his chest. "Son," Darius said gently, "I need to ask you something important." Jordan peeked out from beneath the blanket. "What you saw, Mr. Whitmore's interview. You saw how he twisted things. People are confused. They don't know what really happened or what you felt. The truth is, you're the only one who can tell them." Jordan's eyes widened. "You mean, like, talk on TV, yes. Only if you want to. I'll be there. Dr. Grant, too. No one will force you." Jordan stared at the compass, thinking. His small voice finally broke the silence. "What if they don't believe me?" Darius reached out, gently closing his son's fingers around the compass. The point isn't whether everyone believes. The point is that you believe in yourself, that you speak your truth, no matter how loud the lies get. Jordan's eyes shone, tears brimming. Mom would have wanted that. Right? Darius nodded, his throat tight. She would have wanted you to be heard. The following day, Dr. Grant helped arrange it, a nationally respected outlet, a safe setting, not sensationalized, but intimate. The announcement alone set the media ablaze. Jordan Coleman to speak publicly for the first time. The internet exploded. Some cheered, "Finally, let the boy speak." Others sneered, exploiting a child for headlines. Through it all, Jordan remained quiet, preparing. He practiced answers with Sophia, not scripted, but honest. He asked Darius to sit in the audience, not beside him. "I need to do this myself," he explained. Darius's heart broke with pride. His son was stepping into the fire. The night before the interview, the city slept under heavy rain. In the study, father and son sat together one last time before the storm. Jordan whispered, "What if my voice shakes?" Darius smiled softly. "Then let it shake. That just means it's real." They sat in silence, the compass glinting faintly in Jordan's palm. Tomorrow, the world would hear his voice. The studio lights were warm, almost too warm. As Jordan Coleman sat on the tall chair, his feet didn't reach the floor, so he swung them gently, the compass hidden in his pocket. Cameras circled, quiet but watchful. Beyond the bright lights, his father sat in the first row, hands clasped tightly, his eyes fixed only on his son. Across from Jordan sat the host, a woman known for her calm, empathetic interviews. She leaned forward slightly, voice low and reassuring. "Jordan, thank you for being here. I know this isn't easy." Jordan nodded, swallowing. His palms were sweaty, but he kept them on his knees. "Can you tell us, in your own words, what happened on that flight?" Jordan hesitated. For a second, the cameras, the audience, the millions watching felt overwhelming. Then he remembered his father's words. "Let it shake. That just means it's real." So he spoke. "I was sitting in my seat, reading a comic book. It was my first time flying alone, and I was nervous but excited. Then Mr. Whitmore came and told me I didn't belong. At first, I thought maybe I was in the wrong seat. But when I checked my ticket, it was right. He kept saying I didn't belong there, and he said it in a way that made me feel like it was because of who I am, not just the seat." The room went still. His small voice carried a weight far beyond his years. The host asked gently, "What did that make you feel?" Jordan looked down at his hands. His voice trembled. "It made me feel like, no matter what I do, no matter how good I am, some people will only see me as not enough, and it hurt, because I didn't do anything wrong. I was just a kid sitting in a seat." Darius's throat tightened in the audience. The host gave Jordan space, letting silence settle before asking the next question. "What do you want people to know about you? About that moment?" Jordan lifted his chin, courage flickering in his eyes. "I want people to know that kids like me, we see everything, we hear everything. When adults say we don't belong, we remember it forever. I don't want anyone else to feel the way I felt on that plane, not ever." The host nodded, visibly moved. "That's very powerful. Jordan, thank you." Then came the question no one expected. "If Mr. Whitmore is watching right now, What would you want to say to him? The studio air shifted. Darius leaned forward, heart pounding. This was the moment. Jordan's legs swung once, then stilled. He pulled out the compass from his pocket, clutching it in his hands. His voice was steady now, quiet but firm. I'd tell him, I forgive you. Gasps rippled through the room. The host's eyes widened. Jordan continued, stronger this time. I forgive you, but not because what you did was okay. It wasn't. I forgive you because I don't want to carry your anger with me. I don't want it to make me bitter. I want to be free, and I want you to understand what you did was wrong, so you don't do it to anyone else. The silence was electric. For a boy of 10, the words landed with the gravity of a leader. Darius felt tears sting his eyes. His son had just modeled a strength he himself had struggled to embrace: grace without surrender, truth without hate. The host whispered, Jordan, you may have just changed the way a lot of people see this. The interview ended with Jordan smiling nervously at the applause in the studio, but outside, the storm was only beginning. That night, the internet exploded again. Clips of Jordan's words flooded social media. I forgive you, but not because what you did was okay. The line trended worldwide. Memes were created, think pieces published, sermons preached. Some mocked his forgiveness as naive, but many more called it extraordinary, an act of strength far beyond his years. Commentators compared it to moments of historic courage, children speaking truth to power in ways adults could not. Others said his words exposed the hollowness of Whitmore's excuses. For the first time, the tide turned. Whitmore's supporters fell silent. The sympathy he had garnered evaporated under the weight of a child's clarity. Back at the penthouse, Darius and Jordan sat in the kitchen, ice cream melting in their bowls. You were incredible, Darius said softly. Jordan shrugged, spooning vanilla and sprinkles into his mouth. I was scared. Bravery isn't not being scared, Darius said, smiling faintly. It's speaking anyway. Jordan glanced at his father, then asked, Do you think he heard me? Darius thought of Whitmore, his arrogance, his denial. I think the whole world heard you, and whether he listens or not, that's on him. But you spoke the truth. That's all that matters. Jordan nodded, satisfied. Then I did what Mom would have wanted. Darius's chest ached at the mention of Naomi. He raised his glass of water in a toast. To Mom. Jordan clinked his spoon against it. To Mom. The next morning, Darius received a call. It was Judge Lawson. You should know, she said carefully. Whitmore's attorneys reached out. He wants to meet Jordan privately. Darius froze. After all this, yes, he says he wants to apologize again. Properly this time. Darius looked out the window at the city skyline. He wasn't sure if it was a trap, a PR stunt, or something real, but for the first time, it wasn't his decision alone. I'll ask Jordan, he said finally. When he did, Jordan's answer was immediate. Yes, I want to look him in the eye. I want to know if he really means it. Darius stared at his son, realizing once again how much stronger he was than anyone had given him credit for. The conference room was quiet, its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and fresh coffee. A long oak table stretched across the room, but only 3 chairs had been set, one for Jordan, one for Darius, and one for Charles Whitmore. Darius's security detail stood outside. But Judge Miriam Lawson had insisted this conversation be private. She stood at the doorway, a silent guardian, her sharp eyes making it clear she would step in if needed. Jordan sat beside his father, legs swinging gently, the compass warm in his hand. He wasn't nervous in the way he had been on television. This felt different, closer, more dangerous. The door opened, and Charles Whitmore entered. He was thinner than on television, the defiance in his face tempered by exhaustion. His suit was pressed, his shoes polished, but his eyes gave him away red-rimmed, sleepless. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the hum of traffic below. Finally, Whitmore cleared his throat. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." His voice cracked slightly. He glanced at Darius, then turned to Jordan. "Especially you." Jordan looked at him steadily, saying nothing. Whitmore shifted uncomfortably, lowering himself into the chair opposite them. His hands fidgeted, his wedding ring tapping the table. "I've made a lot of statements these past few weeks," he began, some defensive, some angry, some just plain foolish, but none of them were enough. None of them were honest. Darius crossed his arms. "Then say something honest now." Whitmore winced but nodded. His gaze returned to Jordan. "When I saw you in that seat, I didn't see you. I saw everything I was afraid of. Change, a world I don't control anymore. And I took it out on you. I told myself it was about rules, about status, but it wasn't. It was about me, my fear, my pride." Jordan blinked. He hadn't expected Whitmore to be so blunt. Whitmore's voice dropped lower. "I've lived my whole life believing I earned everything I had. But the truth is, I had doors open for me that were closed to people like your father, like you. And when I saw you sitting there, I felt something I didn't want to admit, that the world is moving forward, and I'm being left behind." Silence fell again. Darius studied Whitmore carefully. The man wasn't groveling. He wasn't rehearsed. He was unraveling, piece by piece, in front of them. Jordan leaned forward slightly. His voice was quiet but firm. "Do you know what it felt like for me?" Whitmore swallowed hard. "Tell me." "It felt like you were saying I wasn't human. Like no matter what I do, no matter who my dad is, no matter how hard I try, I'll always be less to you. That's what hurt." Whitmore's eyes glistened. He nodded slowly. "You're right. That's exactly what I made you feel, and I can't take it back." Jordan's small fingers tightened around the compass. "So why should I believe you now?" That question hung in the air like a blade. Whitmore hesitated. Then he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. He slid it across the table toward Darius. Inside were documents, financial records, memos. "I know this doesn't erase anything," Whitmore said, "but I want to show you something. The firm I worked for, Mercer Financial. They've been exploiting minority-owned businesses for years. Predatory loans, hidden fees, contracts designed to fail. I helped build those deals. I profited from them. And now, I want to help tear it down." Darius stiffened. This was more than an apology. It was a confession. Whitmore continued, voice trembling. "I can testify. I can hand over everything I know to the regulators, to the press. It will ruin me, but maybe it will fix something bigger. Maybe it will mean that what happened to you, Jordan, won't just be a story on the internet. It will change something real." Jordan looked at his father, then back at Whitmore. The boy's eyes were sharp, too wise for his years. "You want forgiveness, Jordan said, "but forgiveness isn't just words. It's change. So if you really mean it, prove it." Whitmore's shoulders slumped, as though the boy's words carried more weight than any judge's sentence. "I will." For the first time, Jordan saw something different in the man, not just arrogance or shame, but possibility. Judge Lawson stepped forward from the doorway. "Then we have work to do," she said simply. That night, father and son sat together in the penthouse living room. The city glowed beyond the glass, but the room felt quiet, almost sacred. "You did well today," Darius said, his voice low. Jordan shook his head. "I don't know. What if he's lying?" Darius considered. "Then we'll find out soon enough. But what matters is you told him the truth, and you made him face it. That's more than most adults can do." Jordan leaned against his father, tired but thoughtful. "It's strange," he murmured. "I thought I wanted him to suffer, but now I just want him to change." Darius wrapped an arm around his son, pride swelling in his chest. "That's strength. Jordan, that's real power. Not tearing someone down, but giving them a chance to rise. And for the first time since the flight." Darius felt something shift inside him too. Not just as a CEO, not just as a father, but as a man still learning, through his son, what justice really meant. The documents spread across Darius's desk looked almost unreal. Line after line of contracts, hidden clauses, and carefully engineered traps. Whitmore had not exaggerated. Mercer Financial had made an empire out of exploitation, targeting small businesses, many of them minority-owned, and bleeding them dry. Darius rubbed his temples, exhaustion settling deep in his bones. "This isn't just one bad deal," he murmured. "It's a system." Judge Lawson stood nearby, scanning the papers with her sharp eyes. "It's bigger than I thought. If this gets out, it won't just ruin Whitmore. It'll shake the entire industry." Jordan sat curled on the sofa, listening though he pretended to read a book. His eyes kept drifting back to his father. "Dad," he said quietly, "does this mean other families got hurt like we did?" Darius turned to him, softening. "Yes, son. Maybe not on a plane, but in ways that left them broken, their businesses, their homes, their dreams, taken." Jordan closed his book. "Then we can't keep this secret." The boy's words hit like a bell. Out of the mouth of a child came the moral clarity Darius had been struggling with. Whitmore, sitting at the edge of the room, cleared his throat. "I've already contacted regulators. They'll want to meet with me in the next few days. I'll testify, hand over everything." Darius studied him carefully. "You understand what this means. You'll lose everything, your reputation, your fortune." Whitmore gave a weary smile. "Maybe it's about time. Maybe this is the only way to make things right." Judge Lawson wasn't convinced. "You'll also make enemies. People who won't care that you're trying to change. People who will see you as a traitor, as if summoned by her words." Darius's phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number flashed on the screen. "Drop this, or you'll regret it." The first signs of backlash came quickly. News outlets that had praised Jordan's interview now began to dig into Darius's past. Old business rivals whispered to reporters about ruthless deals, painting him as a hypocrite. Anonymous blogs suggested the Colemans staged the flight incident for publicity. On social media, hashtags twisted the narrative. Billionaire victim became a sneer, a meme mocking Darius's wealth. One morning, Jordan found graffiti sprayed near the entrance of their building. "Stay in your lane." He froze, staring at the red letters. Darius pulled him close immediately, shielding his son from the cameras that had gathered. "Inside the elevator," Jordan whispered. "Are they mad at us because we told the truth?" Darius knelt, his hands firm on his son's shoulders. "They're mad because the truth threatens them, but that doesn't make it any less true." Jordan's small jaw tightened. "Then we keep going." Darius smiled faintly. Pride battling fear. His son's courage was a light in the storm, but Darius knew storms could destroy as easily as they revealed. That night, Dr. Sophia Grant visited. She had been watching closely, aware of the psychological toll. Jordan is stronger than most children his age. She told Darius privately in the kitchen, but he's still 10. Don't let the world forget that. Darius poured coffee into a mug, his hands restless. "I don't want him in this. I want to protect him, but he keeps stepping into the center. It's like he understands what's at stake better than I do." Sophia's eyes softened. "Maybe he does. Children see things simply. But remember, he doesn't need to carry the whole weight. That's your job." Before Darius could answer, Jordan padded in wearing his pajamas, clutching the compass. "I heard you," he said softly, "and I don't mind carrying some of it. Mom would want me to." The room went still. For a long moment, Darius only looked at his son, seeing Naomi's spirit flickering in his eyes. Finally, he pulled Jordan close, his voice breaking. "Then we carry it together." Days later, Whitmore's first closed-door meeting with regulators took place. Judge Lawson accompanied him as an observer. When he returned, his face was pale but determined. "They're opening an investigation. This won't stay quiet for long." But with every step forward came more threats. An anonymous envelope arrived at Darius's office, containing only a single photo: Jordan walking home from school. Darius's blood ran cold. He locked the building down, doubled security, and considered pulling Jordan out of public life entirely. That evening, Jordan noticed his father pacing, jaw tight, fists clenched. "What happened?" he asked. Darius hesitated, but Jordan's eyes demanded honesty. "Someone's trying to scare us," Darius admitted. "They want us to stop." Jordan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said softly, "Doesn't that mean we're winning?" The boy's courage both inspired and terrified Darius. He hugged him tightly, whispering, "Yes, but it also means we have to be smarter, braver, stronger than ever." The pressure mounted until finally, the news broke wide. A whistleblower had come forward, Charles Whitmore. His testimony, combined with the leaked documents, ignited a firestorm. Headlines blared: "Financial giant accused of systemic discrimination." Talk shows dissected every angle. Protesters gathered outside Mercer's headquarters, demanding accountability, and through it all, one image replayed Jordan on television, saying, "I forgive you, but not because what you did was okay." That forgiveness had cracked Whitmore open, and now it was cracking an entire system. But Darius knew the fight was only beginning. For every person cheering them on, there were powerful forces plotting in the shadows, and somewhere deep inside, he wondered, had he made a mistake bringing his son into this battle, or was Jordan showing him the only way forward? The storm hit faster than Darius expected. Mercer Financial, wounded by Whitmore's revelations, launched its counterattack with precision. On the morning news, a sleek spokesperson sat under studio lights, dismissing Whitmore as a disgruntled former employee and branding his evidence as misrepresented data. They went further, suggesting Darius himself had orchestrated the scandal to weaken competitors. It was a well-worn playbook: deny, discredit, distract. But this time, they aimed their fire at Jordan, too. A segment on a popular cable show replayed footage of Jordan's interview, spliced with mocking commentary. One host sneered, forgiveness from a 10-year-old cute, but hardly a basis for serious policy change. The words hit Darius harder than any boardroom betrayal ever had. His son, just a boy, was being dragged into the merciless machinery of public opinion. That evening, the penthouse felt less like a sanctuary and more like a bunker. Security had been tightened, curtains drawn. Even Jordan noticed the difference. "Dad, why can't I go to school?" he asked, pushing his cereal around the bowl. "Because it's not safe right now," Darius said, keeping his voice even. Jordan frowned. "But if we hide, doesn't that mean they win?" The boy's stubborn clarity cut deep. Darius set his spoon down, meeting his son's gaze. "This isn't about winning. It's about protecting you. That's my job. But maybe," Jordan whispered, "my job is to remind you what we're fighting for." The words lingered long after Jordan left the table, echoing in Darius's chest. The danger became real 3 nights later. Darius had just finished a late call with regulators when one of his security guards burst into the office. "Sir, there's been an incident downstairs." His stomach dropped. "Jordan, no, he's safe," the guard said quickly. But someone slipped past the outer perimeter, left something near the lobby. Darius followed him down, every step heavy with dread. In the lobby, police tape cordoned off a package, an unmarked box. Inside, a broken compass, eerily similar to the one Jordan carried everywhere. Pinned to it was a note: "You can't guide him forever." Darius's chest tightened, rage and fear colliding. Whoever had done this knew about Jordan's compass. That meant surveillance, intrusion, a violation of the most private bond he shared with his son. When Jordan saw the box later, his eyes went wide. He clutched his real compass tight. "They're watching us," he whispered. Darius knelt, pulling his son into his arms. "And I promise you this, Jordan, they will regret it. I won't let anyone touch you." But even as he said it, he wondered, was he promising too much? Could even all his wealth and power shield his son from forces this determined? Meanwhile, Whitmore faced his own reckoning. Reporters camped outside his apartment. Former colleagues sent him veiled threats. His family, long accustomed to privilege, now lived under constant scrutiny. During one tense strategy meeting, Whitmore slammed a fist on the table. "I gave them everything. But Mercer has deeper pockets, louder voices. They'll bury me and you." Judge Lawson's calm voice cut through. "Not if we stay the course. The truth has a way of surviving, but only if we don't fracture now." Darius looked across the table at Whitmore, this man who had once humiliated his son, now sitting as an uneasy ally. Trust was fragile, but their fates were bound together. "We can't win this in the shadows," Darius said. "We need to go public, full force, every document, every testimony, and Jordan stays out of it from here on." But Jordan, overhearing from the doorway, shook his head. "No, Dad, people listened because I spoke. If I stop now, won't they think I'm scared?" The boy's words pierced the room. Even Whitmore looked at him with something like awe. Darius's heart clenched. He wanted to shield Jordan, to build walls so high nothing could touch him. But perhaps Lawson was right. Walls kept danger out, but they also kept light from getting in. The breaking point came one rainy evening. Jordan had been restless, insisting on fresh air. Against his instincts, Darius allowed a short walk around the block, flanked by 2 guards. They hadn't gone far when a black SUV screeched to a stop at the curb. The door flung open, and a masked man jumped out. The guards reacted instantly, shoving Jordan behind them. Shouts echoed through the street. The man lunged, not with a weapon, but with a camera snapping photos, yelling Jordan's name, paparazzi, aggressive, reckless, but not armed. Still, the image of his son, cornered, terrified, seared into Darius's mind. He rushed forward, grabbing Jordan, holding him tight as guards pushed the man back. Flashes lit the rain-soaked night. In seconds, the moment was captured, distorted, broadcast. By morning, tabloids would run it under headlines like Billionaire Boy in the crosshairs. Back in the penthouse, Jordan's small body trembled against his father's chest. "Dad, I don't want to be famous anymore." The words cut Darius to the bone. Fame, visibility, power. These were currencies he understood. But now they were chains around his child. He kissed the top of Jordan's head, whispering fiercely, "You're not famous to me. You're my son, and that's all that matters." But deep inside, Darius knew the truth. He could no longer fight as just a CEO or even as a father. He would have to become something more: protector, strategist, warrior. Because this battle was no longer about seats on a plane. It was about survival, dignity, and the future his son deserved. The idea came from Judge Miriam Lawson. She had seen public battles fought in silence and lies, and she knew transparency was the only weapon powerful enough to pierce Mercer's armor. "Take it to the people," she told Darius in the dim light of his study. "Hold a forum, national television. Bring the documents, the witnesses, the victims. Make it so public they can't bury it." Darius paced the room, the city glittering beyond the windows. He was a man used to boardrooms, not public crusades. But this wasn't just corporate war anymore. Mercer had come after his son. That changed everything. "We'll need security," he said finally. "Media coverage, legal observers. If Mercer tries to spin this, it has to be so open, so undeniable. They choke on their own lies." Whitmore, sitting at the table with dark circles under his eyes, gave a humorless laugh. "They'll come after you twice as hard." Darius met his gaze coolly, then let them. The next week was a blur of preparation. Invitations went out to journalists, regulators, community leaders. Victims of Mercer's predatory practices were located, their stories documented, and through it all, Jordan watched silently from the sidelines. He had barely left the penthouse since the incident with the paparazzi. His once bright eyes seemed older now, shadows of fear dimming their light. One evening, as Darius reviewed security plans, Jordan approached him quietly. "Dad?" Darius looked up, softening his voice. "Yeah, buddy. Do I have to speak at this thing?" Jordan's fingers traced the edge of his compass nervously. Darius put the papers aside. "No, you've already done more than anyone should ask of you. But if I don't, will people think I'm scared?" Darius knelt so they were eye level. "Jordan, being brave doesn't mean saying yes to everything. It means choosing what matters most. If you want to speak, I'll stand right there with you. But if you want to sit this out, that's okay too. You're a kid. You get to be a kid." Jordan nodded slowly, but his eyes were troubled. The day of the forum arrived under a gray, restless sky. The event was held in a vast auditorium in Manhattan, cameras positioned to broadcast nationwide, rows of seats filled with reporters, activists, and ordinary citizens eager to see the showdown between one of the nation's most powerful financial firms and the people accusing it of systemic exploitation. Backstage, Darius adjusted his tie, the weight of the moment pressing down. Judge Lawson stood beside him, calm as ever. "Remember," she said, "this isn't about revenge. It's about truth. Let that be your anchor." Whitmore looked less composed. He paced near the curtain, muttering to himself. Once a titan of finance, now he seemed like a man walking willingly into fire. And then there was Jordan, sitting quietly in a corner chair, his compass glinting faintly in the light. Darius crouched beside him. "Made up your mind?" Jordan hesitated, then whispered, "I want to speak. Just a little. I need them to know what they did." Wasn't just numbers on paper, pride and fear tangled in Darius's chest. He nodded. "Okay, but you decide when to stop. No one pushes you, not even me." The forum began with Darius stepping to the podium. The lights were blinding, the cameras relentless, but his voice was steady. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "Today isn't about wealth or headlines. It's about what happens when power forgets the people it exists to serve. When a company decides profit matters more than humanity." He gestured toward the screen behind him, where documents appeared: Mercer's contracts, emails, internal memos. These papers show patterns of exploitation stretching back years. Families bankrupted, dreams stolen, and for too long, it was buried under legal jargon and corporate spin. Gasps rippled through the audience as victim after victim told their story. A small business owner describing losing her bakery, a veteran whose home had been taken after one missed payment. Each testimony added weight to the mountain pressing down on Mercer's name. Whitmore spoke next, voice shaking but clear. "I was part of this machine. I built it, and I am here to dismantle it." He handed over hard drives to federal investigators seated in the front row. The cameras caught everything. There would be no walking this back. Then, unexpectedly, Jordan walked to the microphone. The room fell silent. He was small behind the podium, his feet barely reaching the platform. But when he spoke, his voice carried through the hall. "My name is Jordan Coleman," he said softly. "Some of you know me because of what happened on that plane. But this is bigger than a seat." He held up his compass. "My mom gave me this before she died. She said it would help me find my way. But what about the people who lost their homes, their businesses, because someone decided they didn't belong in the world of money and power? Who helps them find their way?" The room was so quiet, it felt like the air itself was listening. Jordan's eyes shone, but his voice stayed steady. "I forgave one man because I didn't want to carry hate. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means changing things so it doesn't happen again." When he stepped back, even the reporters had stopped typing. That night, footage of the forum dominated every network. Headlines read, "Billionaire Family Exposes Financial Giant," and "Jordan Coleman Speaks for the Forgotten." Public opinion shifted sharply. Mercer's stock plunged. Lawmakers called for hearings. But, in the quiet of the penthouse, Darius held his son close, knowing the storm wasn't over. For every victory in the light, there were battles waiting in the dark. Still, when Jordan looked up at him and said, "I think Mom would be proud," Darius felt something he hadn't in weeks. Hope. The aftermath of the forum was electric. For a few brief days, it felt as if the tide had finally turned. News anchors praised the courage of the Colemans. Protesters gathered outside Mercer's headquarters, their chants echoing through Wall Street. Lawmakers promised swift investigations, but Darius knew better than to mistake momentum for victory. Mercer Financial hadn't built its empire on fragile foundations. They had survived decades of scrutiny by playing dirtier than anyone imagined. The first strike came quietly, overnight. Fake news stories flooded the internet, photoshopped images of Darius with corrupt politicians, fabricated documents accusing him of tax evasion. Bots amplified the lies until they trended across platforms. The second strike was sharper. Regulators who had seemed eager suddenly slowed their inquiries. Whispers circulated of political pressure, campaign donations. Mercer's reach extended into places even Darius couldn't touch. And then came the third strike, the one that landed close to home. One morning, Jordan opened his tablet to find cruel memes about himself spreading online. His face superimposed on cartoons, mocked for being a spoiled billionaire boy pretending to be a prophet. He slammed the device shut, his cheeks burning. "Why do they hate me so much?" he demanded, his voice cracking. Darius took the tablet gently, setting it aside. "They don't hate you, Jordan. They fear what you represent. And when people are afraid, they lash out." Jordan's small fists clenched. "I just told the truth. Why is that so scary?" Darius pulled him close, heart aching. "Because the truth changes things. And some people would rather destroy you than let the truth live." That evening, as rain lashed against the windows, Darius gathered his team. Judge Lawson sat at the head of the table, her calm eyes betraying the gravity of the situation. Whitmore looked haggard, but his resolve hadn't wavered. Dr. Sophia Grant joined via video call, concern etched on her face. "We're at the most dangerous point," Lawson said. "Mercer is cornered, and cornered animals bite hardest. They'll try to discredit, intimidate, even endanger you. You must decide, do you escalate, or do you protect your family and step back?" All eyes turned to Darius. He felt the weight of their stares, the pull of two worlds, the fighter who wanted justice and the father who wanted peace. Jordan, listening from the doorway, spoke before he could answer. "If we stop now, doesn't that mean they win?" The boy's voice was steady, but Darius saw the fear behind his eyes. He walked over, kneeling to meet his son. "Winning isn't worth losing you," he said softly. "But maybe," Jordan whispered, "if we keep going, we won't just win. We'll change everything." The room fell silent. Even Lawson, who had argued cases in front of the Supreme Court, seemed moved by the boy's clarity. Finally, Darius straightened. "Then we keep going, but on our terms. No more playing defense. We take the fight straight to them." The decision was tested sooner than he imagined. 2 nights later, Darius returned home to find the penthouse eerily dark. His chest tightened. He called out, "Jordan." No answer. Panic clawed at him as he rushed through the rooms. Then, from the living room, he heard a small voice. Dad Jordan sat on the couch, pale, clutching his compass. Next to him, an envelope lay open. Inside was a single Polaroid photo Jordan walking into his school weeks earlier. On the back, scrawled words, "Next time, he won't come home." Darius's knees nearly buckled. His vision tunneled with rage. He wanted to tear the city apart to find whoever had done this. Instead, he pulled Jordan into his arms, holding him so tightly the boy squirmed. "I won't let them touch you," he whispered fiercely. "I swear it." But inside, fear gnawed at him. For the first time, he wondered if he had pushed too far. The next day, Mercer launched their boldest counterattack yet. A high-powered attorney appeared on national television, announcing a lawsuit against Darius and Whitmore for defamation and conspiracy. They framed the Colemans as wealthy opportunists exploiting social tension for personal gain. The narrative was slick, polished, dangerous, and it was working. Public opinion began to waver. That night, as Darius stared at the headlines, Jordan climbed onto the couch beside him. "Dad." "Yes." "Are we going to lose?" Darius closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. "Steady. Only if we let them tell our story for us. But if we keep telling the truth, our truth, they can't erase it." Jordan nodded slowly, clutching his compass. "Then we don't stop." The final blow from Mercer came not through lawsuits or lies, but through violence. On a cold Friday night, as the family returned from a meeting, a car swerved near their convoy, tires screeched, metal crunched. One of the security vehicles spun out, colliding with a lamppost. For a terrifying moment, Darius thought they were under direct attack. His arms shot around Jordan, shielding him as guards scrambled. The SUV sped off into the night, leaving chaos in its wake. Police later called it a reckless driver, but Darius knew better. It was a message, a warning. Back in the safety of the penthouse, Jordan's hands shook as he held his compass. "Dad," he whispered. "What if they never stop?" Darius knelt, cupping his son's face. "Then we outlast them. We stay louder, stronger, braver. They can break cars, throw lies, even scare us half to death, but they can't break the truth." His voice hardened. "And as long as I breathe, they will never break you." The boy leaned against him, silent but steady. For the first time, Darius realized Jordan wasn't just following him into this fight, he was leading him through it. The storm had raged for weeks, and now it reached its peak. Headlines shouted of lawsuits, counterclaims, rumors of violence. Some nights, Darius stared out at the Manhattan skyline, wondering if he had risked everything only to give Mercer exactly what they wanted: chaos. But in the quiet, he always returned to Jordan's words. If we stop now, they win. That conviction, spoken with the innocence of a child but the clarity of a prophet, became the anchor holding him steady. When Mercer announced a live press conference to clear the record, Darius knew it was a trap. They would spin, distort, weaponize public fatigue, but instead of avoiding it, he chose to confront it head-on. "We go live too," he told Judge Lawson, Whitmore, and Sophia. "Not just a statement, a conversation, no lawyers, no spin, just us, unfiltered." Lawson frowned. "It's a gamble. If you slip, even once I won't." Darius interrupted gently. "Because this isn't about me. It's about Jordan. About every kid who's been told they don't belong. And the truth needs no polish." The night of the broadcast, cameras lined the penthouse living room. Darius sat on one side, Jordan beside him, his small hand resting over the compass. On the other side, Whitmore, Lawson, and Sophia. The moderator gave a brief introduction, reminding viewers of the viral video that had sparked a national reckoning. Then he turned to Darius. "Why are you doing this now?" Darius inhaled slowly, because lies spread fast, and silence helps them grow. "I won't be silent." He looked straight into the lens, his voice calm but unyielding. "Weeks ago, my son was yelled at, humiliated, and told he didn't belong in a seat his family paid for. That moment was captured on video. But what the video didn't show was the weight of history behind it. For generations, black children have been told the same thing, that they don't belong. On playgrounds, in classrooms, in boardrooms, on airplanes, and each time, it takes a little piece of them." Jordan shifted closer, his head brushing his father's arm. "I built Helios Dynamics from nothing." Darius continued. "I've sat in rooms where I was the only one who looked like me. I thought I could shield my son from that pain. But prejudice doesn't care about wealth. It doesn't care about titles. It finds you." He paused, letting the silence linger. The room felt electric, charged with something deeper than anger, truth. The moderator then turned to Jordan. "Do you want to share how it felt?" That day, Jordan's voice was soft, but steady. "At first, I thought I did something wrong, like maybe I shouldn't be there. But then I remembered what Mom used to say, that my seat at the table is mine, and no one can take it away. So I just stayed quiet, even though I wanted to cry." Sophia leaned in. "And that, America, is the point. A 10-year-old child should not have to swallow his tears to survive an adult's rage." Judge Lawson added, her voice firm. "This isn't just about one man or one flight. It's about whether we're willing to confront the biases we carry, even the ones we don't want to admit." The program ran for an hour. They spoke of justice, not revenge, of change, not punishment. Darius revealed Olivia's journal entry, her words about transformation over retribution. The camera zoomed in on her handwriting, the ink faded but resolute. "This is what she believed," Darius said softly, "that the real work is slower, harder. It's not about destroying someone, it's about creating the chance for them to see differently." And then, in a moment that stunned viewers across the country, he addressed Charles Mercer directly. "Mr. Mercer, you built an empire, but you also built walls inside yourself. If you're watching this, know this: I don't want to ruin you. I want you to change. I want you to see my son, not as a threat, but as a child who deserves joy. If you can't do that, then the world will move on without you. But if you can, then maybe there's hope for all of us." The response was immediate. Social media exploded, not with memes or mockery, but with tears, confessions, solidarity. Thousands shared their own stories the first time they were told they didn't belong, the quiet ways prejudice had cut them down. Mercer's press conference, held the next day, fizzled. His carefully rehearsed denials rang hollow against the raw truth of the Coleman's broadcast. Even some of his allies began to distance themselves. Within weeks, Mercer Financial announced Charles Mercer's retirement. Investigations revealed years of corruption, and the empire he had built began to fracture. For Darius and Jordan, the victory wasn't about Mercer's fall. It was about what came after. Letters poured in from children across the country. Some thanked Jordan for his bravery. Others drew pictures of airplanes with kids of all colors sitting side by side. Teachers asked if they could use the broadcast in their classrooms. One Saturday morning, Jordan bounded into the kitchen, holding a stack of envelopes. "Dad, this one's from Texas. This one's from Chicago. Look, this kid says he stood up to a bully because he saw me do it." Darius smiled, tears prickling his eyes. For the first time in months, the weight on his chest eased. "See, son, you didn't just hold your seat, you helped others hold theirs too." Months later, father and son stood at the edge of the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool, invited to speak at a civil rights forum. The water shimmered under the spring sun, and Jordan's reflection rippled beside his father's. Darius spoke first, his voice carrying over the crowd. Justice isn't about headlines or hashtags. It's about the daily work of making space for dignity, for truth, for every child to know they belong. Then Jordan stepped forward, gripping his compass. His voice rang out, clear and confident. "On that plane, I thought no one would come for me, but my dad did. And now I know when something wrong happens, we can all come for each other." The crowd erupted in applause, a sound that seemed to echo across generations. That night, back in their hotel room, Darius tucked Jordan in. The boy's compass lay on the nightstand, its silver worn smooth by his touch. Dad Jordan murmured, half asleep, "Yes, do you think Mom saw all this?" Darius's throat tightened, but he smiled. "I think she did, and I think she's proud." Jordan's eyelids fluttered shut, peace finally softening his face. Darius sat beside him, watching his son breathe, and for the first time in a long while, he let himself believe in tomorrow, because the fight wasn't over. Prejudice would not vanish in a day, or a year, or even a generation. But tonight, in the quiet of that room, a father and son had proven something powerful that even in the face of injustice, love, truth, and courage could write a different ending. A beginning, really, one that might change lives forever. Life often places us at crossroads between anger and understanding, between vengeance and healing. The story of Darius and Jordan reminds us that power is not only measured by wealth or influence, but by how we choose to respond when dignity is threatened. Many of us know what it feels like to be judged unfairly, dismissed, or told we don't belong. In those moments, our instinct may be to strike back, to crush what hurt us. Yet true strength often lies in restraint, in choosing the harder path of justice that seeks not only accountability but transformation. For older generations especially, this story echoes a truth we've lived. Change doesn't come from one loud act of anger, but from steady, courageous choices that ripple outward. When we stand firm in who we are, when we teach the next generation to claim their place with dignity, we plant seeds of hope that outlive us. Justice that heals instead of harms, that's the lesson. And it's one we can all carry into our families, our communities, and our everyday lives. Thank you so much for watching and sharing this journey with us. If this story touched you, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more stories of courage, dignity, and hope to light. Together, we can keep these conversations alive.